When I was a kid, yokai lived in picture books and summer festivals. Paper lantern ghosts with big tongues. Foxes pretending to be pretty women. Old umbrellas hopping around on one leg when they turned 100 years old. Cute, weird, safely trapped in ink and folklore. Now I'm 20, and yokai live in my phone. That's what I keep thinking whenever I open the app. My name is Yuta. I go to university in Tokyo, but this story begins in the countryside, at my grandparents' house in Niigata, where nothing interesting is supposed to happen except rice planting and fireworks. Last summer, I went back for Obon. It was the first time in 3 years. Pandemic, exams, part-time jobs, there was always an excuse. But when my grandmother called and said, "Grandpa's legs are getting weaker, come home while he still remembers your face," I couldn't dodge it anymore. So I got on a crowded Shinkansen with a cheap suitcase, my laptop, and my phone, the only thing that made the idea of the countryside bearable. Grandma's house hadn't changed. Same brown tatami. Same sliding doors with little holes in the paper from when I'd poked them as a kid. Same framed calligraphy in the hallway, one day, one lifetime. Grandpa had changed. He'd shrunk. His back was more bent, his hands more spotted, but his eyes were still sharp. He thumped my shoulder with surprising strength. "So you finally remembered your hometown," he said. "Tokyo didn't eat you yet?" "Not completely," I said. "Still half Niigata." He snorted. "We'll fix that." That night, after too much grilled fish and too many questions about girlfriends and jobs, I lay on the futon in my childhood room, scrolling. Outside, the countryside was dark in a way Tokyo never is. No trains. No vending machines glowing on corners. Just crickets and the occasional dog. My friends were sending photos from city festivals, rooftop barbecues, live houses. I was replying with pictures of the tatami and the old CRT TV when an advertisement popped up in my feed. "See the yokai hiding in your everyday life. Download now and find what's following you." I rolled my eyes. "Of course," I muttered. "Summer ghost content." Still, my thumb moved. Curiosity is a yokai of its own. The app was called Yokam, a terrible pun on yokai and camera. It promised AI-powered AR filters that would reveal spirits in your room, your street, your face. I downloaded it. It opened with a cheap drum sound and a splash screen of cartoon ghosts. "Welcome, user. Allow camera access?" I allowed it and pointed my phone around the room. At first, nothing. Just my futon. The bookshelf. The poster of a J-rock band I used to like in middle school. Then, near the sliding door, a faint shimmer appeared on the screen. The app beeped. A translucent shape popped into view, a classic paper lantern ghost. Big eyes, long tongue, faint trails of blue fire around it. The caption said, "Chachino bake detected." I laughed. "Wow," I said. "Very original." I turned the phone toward the ceiling. A cartoon spider spirit appeared, hanging upside down. Toward my desk, a tiny umbrella ghost bouncing. The AR was pretty good. The spirits seemed to attach to surfaces realistically, their shadows bending with the room's light. Not bad for a free app. I walked down the hallway, pointing the camera around. The app occasionally pinged, popping up cutesy versions of yokai, a raccoon dog peeking from behind the shoe cabinet, a tiny river spirit clinging to the sink. I turned the phone toward the front door. The app froze for a second. Then, very slowly, something appeared on the screen. A lantern. Not the round, goofy kind from festivals. This was long and thin, with blackened paper and a wooden frame, hanging at shoulder height from a hook that didn't exist in real life. Its paper was stained, like it had been left out in the rain for years, then dried and relit. The faint suggestion of a face was visible in the folds, eye sockets a little too hollow, a mouth stretched down in a permanent, exhausted frown. The caption didn't pop up right away. When it finally did, it was in plain text, not the colorful font the other yokai had. "Unknown lantern type entity detected. Name? Distance, 0.8 m. I lowered the phone. There was nothing in front of the door. Just the empty air where shoes went, the umbrella stand, the old wooden step. I lifted the phone again. The lantern was still there, swaying slightly on the screen, as if in a wind I couldn't feel. Its light was wrong, not the warm yellow of normal lanterns, but a sickly, grayish white. Like a fluorescent bulb that had almost given up. I backed away. The lantern didn't follow. It simply hung there, motionless, watching. Or waiting. Cheap scare, I muttered. Good tracking, though. I went back to bed and forgot about it. For a while. The next morning, Grandpa caught me at the gen can as I was putting on my shoes. "Where are you going so early?" he asked. "Just walking around," I said. "Nostalgia tour." He grunted. "Take this," he said, reaching into the umbrella stand. He handed me a small, old-fashioned flashlight. The metal was worn, the rubber switch cracked. "I'm going out in the daytime," I said. "What do I need that for?" "You're a city boy now," he said. "You forgot the tunnels." I blinked. "The tunnels?" He smirked. "You'll see." Our town was exactly as boring as I remembered. 2 convenience stores, 1 supermarket, 1 game center that somehow still existed, and a street of shuttered shops with fading signs. The mountain sat at the edge of everything, green and heavy, like they were waiting for the town to finally give up and sink back into the trees. I walked past my old elementary school, the shrine, the river where we used to catch crayfish. My feet, obeying muscle memory, took me to the path behind the shrine, the one that led up the slope, past bamboo and rusted fences, to an old tunnel. It wasn't long. Maybe 40 meters. A concrete tube punched through the hill, built before the bypass road existed. Cars didn't use it now, it was for pedestrians and bicycles and, in summer, stupid kids daring each other to run through without a flashlight. At the entrance, moss had grown over the concrete wall. Faded kanji said, "Sano Tunnel." I stood at the edge and looked in. Even in daylight, the inside was dim. The far exit was a round, bright coin. The middle was shadow. My phone buzzed. A push notification. Yokai, new area detected. Some places have higher yokai density. Want to scan? I hesitated. Then I sighed. Fine, I said. Let's see your yokai density. I opened the app and pointed it into the tunnel. For a moment, nothing. Then my phone vibrated hard. The screen dimmed. A warning popped up. High anomaly concentration. Proceed with caution. Some entities may not respond to standard filters. Very funny, I muttered, stepping into the tunnel. The temperature dropped by at least 5 degrees. The concrete walls exhaled damp, cool air. My footsteps echoed. Water dripped somewhere unseen. I panned the camera along the walls. Shapes flickered. A one-eyed woman peeking from a crack. A cat with too many tails stretching in the shadows. A headless man in a suit standing calmly by the wall, faint and transparent. I knew they weren't real. It was an overlay, mapped onto the geometry of the tunnel. But the way they lingered at the edge of the light made my skin crawl. Then, halfway through, I pointed the phone straight ahead. The lantern was there. Hanging in the center of the tunnel on the screen. Closer than at the front door last night. Distance, 0.4 m. No name. No cute caption. Just that thin, tired light. On the real tunnel ceiling, there was nothing. No fixture. No hook. I stopped walking. The air on the back of my neck felt heavy, as if someone were standing too close. "Okay," I said out loud, to no one. "Nice AR, good job." "I'm scared." "You win." My voice came back to me, flattened and damp. I stepped sideways to go around where the lantern floated on the screen. The app followed. No matter where I moved, no matter how I angled the phone, the lantern stayed the same distance away. Center of the screen. 0.4 m. As if it were attached to me, not the tunnel. My hands felt slick. I clicked the power button and turned the screen off. The tunnel was just a tunnel. Wet concrete. Far exit. Dripping water. My heart slowed a little. Then the flashlight I'd shoved into my jacket pocket turned on by itself. I jerked. The beam pointed straight ahead. Through the weak cone of light, the air shimmered faintly, right where the lantern had been on the screen. A thin column of brightness that wasn't dust, wasn't mist. Something was hanging there. Invisible, but heavy enough to bend the air. The little hairs on my arms stood up. I turned and walked quickly toward the exit, resisting the urge to run. Running felt like a dare. Like turning your back on something that really did want to catch you. When I stepped out into daylight, the normal heat slapped me. Cicadas screamed in the trees. My phone buzzed again. New entry added. Unregistered lantern type detected. This entity will now follow your scans. A thumbnail icon had appeared in the app's Yokai list. It was just a gray silhouette of a lantern with, underneath. I held down on the icon. No delete option. Of course. That night, after dinner, Grandpa brought out the good sake and the good stories. The city kids used to be scared to walk through that Sano tunnel, he said, pouring. Said they heard footsteps behind them when they were alone. A lantern swinging ahead of them when there was no wind. My chopsticks froze. What kind of lantern? I asked casually. He shrugged. Old kind. Long, thin. The type they used to hang in front of shops, he said. There was some accident up there long before your time. A peddler, they say. Or a traveling storyteller. Got hit by a truck or drowned in the river, depends on who you ask. People started saying his lantern comes back looking for the way home. He sipped. You saw something? He asked. Just an app, I said. AR yokai stuff. He grunted. You kids, he said. You took all the things we were supposed to fear and turned them into stickers. He tapped his phone, a cheap flip model. Maybe that's why they're angry, he added. No one knows how to be properly afraid anymore. The lanterns started showing up more often after that. Anytime I opened Yocam, even in my bedroom, even in the bright kitchen, the other cartoon yokai would scatter to the edges of the screen, faint and distant. The lantern hung in the center. Always the same distance away. 0.4 m inside. 0.8 m outside. Sometimes it swayed slightly, as if reacting to my breathing. Sometimes the faint face in the paper seemed closer to the surface. The apps list updated. Name, not found. Type, lantern class lingering entity. Location, following user. Notes, this yokai has attached to your camera. Some users report persistent afterimages. I tried uninstalling the app. The icon vanished. The lantern did not. It kept appearing in other apps. At first, just as glitches, a streak of gray-white light at the edge of photos, a ghostly shape reflected in windows and videos my friends sent. Then, in the default camera app, when I pointed it around my room, the lantern was there again. Same distance. Same tired light. Sometimes, when I lay in bed at night scrolling through social media, it would appear in sponsored content, an ad for ramen, with a faint lantern hanging over the bowl. A travel reel from Okinawa, horizon and sea and a little gray smear at the center. Once, during a video call with a friend in Tokyo, the connection lagged. The image froze. For 2 seconds, instead of his face, I saw the lantern hanging in his room, right where his head had been. Then the call resumed. Your signal's trash, he said. Are you in a cave? I closed the app. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was a UI bug. Some weird hitch in how apps share camera data. I restarted the phone. I updated the OS. I factory reset. Nothing. The lantern followed. It never showed up to other people. When I took screenshots and sent them to my friends, the lantern wasn't there. When I put the photos on my laptop, no lantern. It was only visible when I myself looked through the screen. One night, half as a joke and half because I didn't know what else to do, I found myself in front of the small shrine behind the house. The stone foxes squatted on either side, faces eroded. The donation box was empty except for a few rusted coins. Paper amulets hung limp. I stood in front of it with my phone in my hand. The lantern glowed softly on the screen, right in front of my chest. "Okay," I said, feeling stupid. "If you're real, what do you want?" The cicadas screamed. My phone buzzed. A notification. Yokam, new event unlocked. Some yokai respond to voice. Try asking, "What are you looking for?" I didn't have Yokam installed. Or I shouldn't have. The screen flickered. A text box opened over the camera feed. Listening. My voice shook. "What are you looking for?" I asked. For a moment, nothing. Then, faintly, text began to appear in the box. Not typed. Written. Each character formed stroke by stroke, as if someone were dragging one finger across the glass. "The way home." The words sat there, pulsing. "You're lost," I said. The lantern swayed. The screen shook, not because of any animation, but because my hands were trembling. "Home where?" I asked. "Tunnel? River? Shop?" Slowly, more text appeared. Hit. Can't hear sounds. Only nights. For a moment, I thought of headlights in the rain. A lantern swinging from a pole attached to a cart. A curve in the road near the tunnel. "Did you die in the tunnel?" I whispered. No answer. Instead, the lantern on the screen flickered. The distance counter changed. 0.8 m. 0.7 m. 0.6 m. It was moving. I dropped the phone. It hit the dirt, screen facing up. On it, the lantern had grown, as if it were hanging almost directly above the camera. The faint suggestion of a face was clearer now. Sunken eyes. The shadow of teeth. Behind me, the air felt thicker, like someone large and wet was leaning over my shoulder. I didn't turn. "You can't stay with me," I said, forcing my voice to stay low. "I don't know the way." The words I'd heard from Grandpa echoed in my head. The lantern comes back looking for the way home. Maybe attaching to my camera had just been its newest way of asking. I took a deep breath. "I'll go back," I said. "To the tunnel. Tomorrow. I'll listen." I didn't know what that meant. But the lantern's light steadied. The distance counter stopped at 0.4 m. Then, very slowly, it began to move away. 0.5 m. 0.6 m. 0.7 m. The lantern grew smaller on the screen. It drifted, not toward the tunnel, not toward the road, but upward. Into the dark branches above the shrine. It hung there, tiny and gray, like a strange fruit. Then the app crashed. When I reopened the camera, nothing anomalous appeared. My reflection stared back at me from the black glass. Behind me, the shrine sat quietly, foxes watching. I didn't sleep much. When I did, I dreamed of lights. Not just lanterns, but phone screens held up in the dark. Headlights cutting through rain. The cold glow of vending machines on empty roads. Somewhere in all that light, something old and tired drifted, forgotten, trying to recognize the world it used to understand. I woke to Grandpa banging on my door. "You brought the rain," he said. "Good. The tunnel will be nice and spooky for your little game." "What?" I croaked. He tossed my jacket at me. "You were mumbling in your sleep," he said. "Kept saying tomorrow and listen. If you're going up there, go in daylight. Even ghosts have office hours." The path to Sano Tunnel was slick from overnight showers. Mist clung to the trees. The entrance yawned, darker than before. I brought the old flashlight. I brought my phone. I brought a small paper lantern I'd bought at the 100 yen shop in town, its cheap battery-powered light cold but steady. I stood at the tunnel mouth and bowed. It felt ridiculous. I did it anyway. "I'm back," I said. My voice sounded thin. I turned on the flashlight and stepped inside. The tunnel swallowed the world in 3 paces. The exit shrank behind me, my breath echoed. Drops of water fell from the ceiling in slow, irregular patterns. I didn't open any apps. I didn't point the camera around. I just walked until I was in the middle. Then I stopped and turned off the flashlight. Darkness slammed in. It wasn't absolute. A little gray leaked in from both ends. But the middle felt thicker, older, layered. I could hear my own heartbeat. My mouth was dry. "I'm listening," I said into the dark. At first, nothing. Then, very gradually, other sounds emerged under the obvious ones. Not just water. Not just the distant hiss of wind through trees. There was a low, intermittent hum, like tires on wet asphalt. The faint rattle of something wooden shaking. A man's voice, far away, calling out a word I couldn't make out. Then, screech. Impact. Silence. My whole body flinched. The sounds faded, replaying, again and again, like a loop stuck on 3 seconds of memory. Screech. Impact. Silence. On the 3rd loop, I forced myself to speak. "I'm here," I said. "I hear you." The noise paused. Then something else slid into the gap. A whisper. Michi. Not the clean, AR text version from the app. A real voice. Hoarse, wet, thick with years of not being used. "The way," I said. "You're looking for the way." My fingers tightened around the cheap lantern. Carefully, I lit it. Its weak LED glow pushed the dark back a little. Not far. Just enough for me to see the floor, the walls, my own shoes. I set it down in the middle of the tunnel. "Here," I said. "This is the way now. People still pass here. They still see this light. You don't need my phone." My voice trembled. "But if you stay attached to me," I added, "you'll go somewhere that forgets you even faster. Tokyo. Different tunnels. Different roads. You'll get more lost." The air in front of me felt heavier, as if something were leaning in to listen. "Stay with this," I said, touching the lantern. Or go to the shrine. They remember things there. I don't. I'm leaving." The sounds began again. Screech. Impact. Silence. But this time, after the silence, there was a faint, new sound. A single, wet step. As if someone had moved 1 foot forward on the tunnel floor. My brain screamed at me to turn on the flashlight. To snap a photo. To open the app and see if the lantern was there. I did none of those things. Instead, I bowed, in the dark, to the presence, to the echo. "Sorry," I whispered. "For turning you into content." I backed away, 1 step at a time, eyes on the faint pool of cheap light in the center of the tunnel. When I reached the exit, I turned and walked out. I did not run. Not because I wasn't afraid. Because I was, properly, finally afraid in a way that felt respectful. That night, back in my room, I opened the camera app. No lantern. I opened Yokai, which had somehow reappeared on my home screen. No unknown entity in the list. Just the usual cartoon spirits, bouncing and grinning at the edges of the screen. The unknown lantern type entry was gone. In its place, a new message had appeared in the app's notification center. Some yokai move on when they are heard. Thank you for updating our database. New filter unlocked, tunnel echo. I uninstalled the app. This time, it stayed gone. I'm back in Tokyo now. My friends talk about haunted tunnels they want to drive through, urban legends about cursed AR filters, glitches that show faces behind you in mirrors when you take selfies at 3 a.m. Sometimes I tell them the story of the Sano Tunnel. I leave out the app. I leave out Grandpa's flashlight. I leave out how many times I almost turned around in the dark. I just say, there's a place in my hometown where, if you stand very still and listen, you can hear an accident that already happened, trying to happen again. They laugh. They ask if it's real. I always say the same thing. Does it matter if you still feel something when you walk through? Sometimes, late at night, when I scroll through my phone and see my reflection in the black glass, I think I see a faint glow behind me. Not always. Just enough to make me lower the device, turn, and look at my actual room. Nothing there. Just the window, the city, the neon. But if I close my eyes and listen really hard, under the hum of traffic and the buzz of lights, I can still hear it. Screech. Impact. Silence. And then, very faintly, the sound of someone taking one careful step toward whatever tiny light is left to follow. I don't use AR Yokai apps anymore. If I want to meet what's hiding in Japan's corners, I'll go without the filter. Some things don't like being turned into content. Some yokai don't fear being seen. They fear being turned into a sticker and forgotten while they're still trying to get home.